For our sixth graders, talking about sexual health education. We're very, very proud that we have a partnership with San Diego State University, Dr. Brenda Pacheco. We're very, very thankful that you're here. Dr. Pacheco, where are you hiding out at? We developed a partnership with San Diego State University last year to be able to provide services for our community at Albert Einstein, and we're very, very happy to have people like Dr. Pacheco and our nursing students here. People sometimes got confused when we talked about sex education with what was going on at San Diego Unified. We have nothing to do with what's going on at San Diego Unified with sex education. We developed our own program and our own partnership. It was very, very successful, and in the spirit of being collaborative and being transparent. We've also hired Mariana Miller, who's, I'll introduce Mariana, she's new to the staff. She's our student and parent advocate. She's a social worker. And we wanted to be able to have Mariana make the connections with our parents here and as well as at home, and provide supports and a resource and an index of resources for supports. And part of that partnership with San Diego State, working with Dr. Pacheco and her students, falls under the umbrella of what Mariana is doing, is to help develop a whole support network for our families here at AA. And this is Mariana Miller, our student, parent, community advocate, and social worker. I introduced you about 4 minutes ago, but you're hiding out. So our goal is to be able to work with Mariana to be able to develop a support network of resources for our students, and for our parents, and for our families, and our community, and AEA. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Working?
Testing. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So thank you, Andy, for the introduction. So my name is Brenda Pacheco, and I am a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for 20 years and in San Diego for 17, working in hospitals and in the community. And really my passion is working with the youth and helping to educate the youth. So some of my background, I have done some work with San Diego Youth Services, working with some of the youth who are survivors of sex trafficking, and I helped work with them to develop sort of health-based education. And I've had the privilege to work with Albert Einstein over the past year to help create this program that we're going to talk about tonight, which is geared to provide your children education on sexual, reproductive health, and healthy relationships. So before I get started, I just want to introduce the
curriculum that we wanted to share with you all. Kind of the main purpose of this is just to help facilitate good communication, to give the students the basis to communicate effectively, to establish what a safe relationship is, safety in relationships. We also want to encourage other topics such as growth and help human development, body image, gender, sexual orientation, relationships, marriage, and family. We also, through this curriculum, want to reassure the students that sexuality is a normal part of human development, and we also want to provide your children with the knowledge and skills necessary to protect their own sexual and reproductive health.
So some background on why this program is chosen, the Advocates for Youth, with the 3 R's, which are rights, respect, and responsibility, is that your children have the right to an honest sexual health class and information, and they have the right to confidential and affordable health services. They deserve respect and learning about it, and they deserve to have their opinions heard. And then us as a society and you all as parents, we all have a responsibility to give them accurate information. So the Advocates for Youth, it was developed by a panel of nationally recognized experts, educators, and authors that all their main focus is on sexual health education. It meets both the national and state sexuality education guidelines. It also is approved in California, which is very important. And it covers all 16 topics recommended by the Center for Disease Control. It's flexible for K through 12th grade, but we were able to adapt it to be 6th through 8th grade here. And it's available in both English and Spanish.
So the first lesson is called Change is Good, and this lesson is on puberty. The first learning goal from this is to understand the physical, social, cognitive, and emotional changes their bodies will be going through, so they're not alarmed and they recognize that this is all a normal part of development. The second learning goal is to be informed of websites that contain extra medically accurate information about puberty and adolescence, so if they have any more questions or need clarification, that they have resources that they are able to go to.
Okay, so the teaching will include, at first when we start off any lesson, we like to explain that puberty is very normal. It's a normal process that we all go through, whether you're going through it now, whether you'll go through it in a couple of years. Everyone goes through changes and everybody's body's gonna start changing. So that's how we like to start off the lesson. Then we put all the children in groups of 4 to 5, and we have 4 different categories. We have the physical, we have the social, we have the cognitive, and emotional changes. And in those categories, there's different scenarios that we provide the students. So, for example, for the physical category, there may be a scenario saying that, you may grow hair on your arms or your legs or in your genital area. While for the social category, it may be something like your peer pressure will start to increase. So there's many different scenarios that we provide from, and in those groups that work out for about 10 to 15 minutes. And after that, we'll go over the answers and we'll just discuss the answers and see if they have any questions, any comments, any concerns, why, or just anything that may seem foreign to them. We will be able to go into further detail and kind of explain and help them out. And after that, we'll send them home with a homework assignment, which the students and their parents or caregivers, they can go online and watch a video on puberty. And this is really good because all our homework assignments that we like to assign, we like to bridge that gap from student to parent or caregiver. That way, they feel more comfortable coming to you guys and they feel more comfortable asking questions to their parent or caregiver. And that way they don't have to be alarmed or scared if they notice any changes.
So the second lesson is all about understanding boundaries. So in this module, I guess you could say, we're going to define what a boundary is and have your children define their own personal boundaries or just define boundaries that they've heard of. We also want them to understand how to be clear about their own boundaries with others and how to show respect for the boundaries of others as well. And we also want them to understand and emphasize that no one has a right to violate those boundaries, and there are emotional, physical, and also legal consequences of that. And we also want to emphasize resources to whom they can report instances of sexual assault. So the teaching of this lesson, like I said, will see what the students, and assess what their boundaries are, have them provide some examples. We'll also have them work through a scenario worksheet in small groups, kind of similarly to what Jared was saying, just running through some scenarios and having them work through that and then come together and share that with the class. We also are going to define what rape and sexual assault is, that is unwanted sexual contact, and explain, like I said, the emotional and physical harms We also want to emphasize what consent is and what it is not. Consent meaning no always means no, and that silence also means no. And then at the end, we're going to send them home with another scenario worksheet for them to complete, just to really reinforce these principles. And the real goal of this is just for them to really understand their own personal boundaries and know that there are resources in case they know of a situation in which those were violated or along those lines.
The third lesson is being a sex ed sleuth, and this is aimed at identifying whether websites are reliable or not. So the goals are to identify reliable websites, as well as know what is considered a reliable website. So we're going to be looking at the bias a website might have, or what links they provide, and who the author is of that website, to see if it is reliable or not. And then demonstrate an ability to determine if a website is both medically accurate and age appropriate. So to do this, we're going to first provide an overview of what constitutes a reliable website. And then with this, we're going to kind of go through a little bit of a role play. So if you had a question and you decided to Google it, then how would you determine if you're reading good information or whether you're on a website you shouldn't necessarily be on. And then we're going to split up the children into groups, and they'll be assigned a website, and then they will have to determine those groups whether it's reliable or not. And the homework assignment for this lesson is they're going to get a list of websites, and they're going to be asked to go home and look at it with a parent or caregiver and determine whether it's accurate and reliable or not.
So passive consent is required by California law, and this states that as a parent or guardian, you have the right to excuse your child from all or part of comprehensive sexual health education and assessment related to that education through a passive consent or opt-out process. Written and audiovisual materials used during education is also available for inspection, so you have the right to see what your child is also seeing. We just want to emphasize that consent is assumed unless notice is given in writing stating otherwise. So if you choose to opt out, you must write it. Parents and guardians also have the ultimate responsibility in their child's sexual education, knowledge, and imparting values regarding these topics to their children. So you also play an important role in educating your child as well.
Okay, so this lands on California confidentiality and consent laws. So we put this slide in because a lot of people may not know or understand what is actually legal in the state of California. So in the state of California, minors of any age may purchase contraceptive methods and seek medical attention related to pregnancy or abortion without any parental consent. Also, minors 12 years and older may consent to diagnosis and or treatment for infections, contagious diseases, and STDs, including the HPV vaccine. They may also consent to diagnosis and or treatment of HIV. Last, outpatient medical health or alcohol, tobacco, or other drug services can also be provided for minors 12 years or older. So like I said, a lot of people may not know this law, so we like to put this in here just to kind of give everybody a heads up. And like I said, with the homework assignment, it's all about communication and really bridging that gap, so that way they feel more comfortable talking to a caregiver or talking to a parent than having to go to one of these resources.
These are some resources that we found in the community and online. They have a lot of tips and tricks for parents talking to their children about sexual education and sexual health. So if you guys have any questions or looking for more resources, these are good ones, and they're in your handout or in the PowerPoint slides, and there's also a separate handout with more that you can access. Now we would like to open the floor for any questions.
Thank you, guys. Before we get into questions, I do want to emphasize that as we are talking with the students, we are going to, the students do have the right to know about all of the consent laws, the resources, but again, throughout this curriculum, we're going to emphasize that it really, that talking to a trusted adult, talking to a parent, talking to a guardian, that is where the emphasis is going to be placed, to talk to a nurse. So we want to be able to have them be knowledgeable of what the rights are, but really what we want is to encourage them to reach out to parents, reach out to social workers, nurses, as a resource so that they don't have to face any of these things alone. So we want to give them the information and the power to move forward, and really for them to connect with parents and for other healthcare professionals to help guide them through. So it's kind of a lot of information. Does anybody have questions about any specific topics? Just by raise a hand. Yes.
A few.
Sure.
When will the course descriptions be released to the parents? You said that there's 3 classes per grade. I'm wondering when we'll get notice of what each class will have.
Yeah, Mariana. So as far as I know that the curriculum, I believe the question was, when will you guys be giving them the curriculum? I know it was the website, and the link to the curriculum has already been posted online, but when will they receive information on the other grade levels for 7th and 8th?
Well, so I looked at on the
Yes.
school's website. Yeah, so there's not much there that I saw. So anyways,
Specific to
besides
the
that, then,
specific to the classroom, you
when will we
mean?
get the class schedule on this particular date, this particular class?
Okay.
What date it'll be taught?
Yeah, well, we have to coordinate with the nursing department because that's during their clinical hours, because they will be the ones coming into the classroom. And so we're waiting for their spring schedule in order for us to set that into our kids' schedule, but that's gonna be during PE.
During what?
PE.
And
Physical education.
so when do you get their schedule?
So that's,
So we'll have that. So we will have that all set up as far as the specific dates and the dates of the presentations by the end of the year. So the classes probably will not start until, I would say, maybe the earliest might be February.
Okay, so by the end of 2018, we'll get more information on what each class.
As far as when each class will be taught, yes, and the specific, and we'll have the links. So by the end of the year, we will have the dates solidified, and then on the dates, what specific of these 3 classes, which dates what classes will be offered on what dates.
Okay. And then you indicated something about enhancements. Can someone elaborate on that? Or did you already enhancements?
There are people from the community coming in.
Yeah, so we're going to have discussions. So we're looking maybe not for 6th graders, but when it comes to, so the 7th grade curriculum talks a lot about reproductive health, STD, HIV prevention. It talks about gender identification. So we're thinking of pulling in guest speakers from San Diego Youth Services, as well as San Diego Public Health to come in and supplement to talk about pregnancy, specialty in pregnancy prevention, HIV, STD prevention. So for the 6th graders, we probably will not be using any supplemental speakers at the 6th grade level, but as we move into the 7th and 8th grade level, we may be pulling in speakers in that case. But every year, so as your students progress through Albert Einstein, we're going to help hold these parent universities that talks about the specific grade level. So next year for Parent University, we're going to discuss 7th grade curriculum and details with that. And then of course, when your children move on to 8th grade, we'll talk about that as well. So right now what we're doing is, this week we're talking about 6th graders. Next week there is a Parent University that talks about 7th, and then the week after that is 8th grade. And you guys are welcome to come to those sessions as well. Also at the end of the month, we are having on, not the end of this month, but the end of November. So on November 26th, we're going to do a review of all the curriculum. We're going to review 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, all during a day session. So on November 26th, from 9 a.m. to 12, if anybody is available during the day, we're going to also have an additional session where we're going to go over all 3 at one time. So if you would like to come back, or if you have anybody who missed sessions, we're going to be doing that available as well.
And then, so the student nurses will be the presenters for the classes, unless there's somebody else that's going in?
Correct.
So the teachers that are, work here, they're not gonna be part of the presentation.
They're going to be there for support for the students, but they will not be presenting, no. So it will be the students as well as registered nurses like myself, and they're nursing instructors, so there will be nurses with them. But the majority of the education, other than the experts from the community, will be from the nursing
And
students.
there's one more question. And then, so all the materials that will be provided to the pupils, are they available now for parents' review?
Yes, yeah.
And if so, then where would we go?
We will be able to provide that on the website,
Which website? The school?
the Albert Einstein, yeah, no, it was in the newsletter. Was it attached to the newsletter? Yeah, it was attached to the newsletter.
The materials or how to access the materials?
Access the materials, you click on the link and then it says the 3 R's, 3 R's?
Yeah,
Sure, but that's, I don't
We
know if
can-
that's all the materials. If it is,
Yeah.
then there's-
we can, what I can do is, Mariana, I can have all of them individualized, and we can create, so instead of, they all are available on the website for Advocates for You 3R. So when you click on that, it does have there it has a list of the curriculum with the classes all itemized, and we're using that exact. Does that answer?
Well, I don't know. For example, you got on lesson 2 that there's definitions of rape and sexual assault. I'd like to see how you define those.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have, so those are, we can make it simpler for you. So that is on the link, but what we can do is I can have each lesson planned exactly as it's going to be described to the students, itemized, Mariana, and then you can post it
We're
online.
pulling it up right now.
Okay,
That's the access to the curriculum that you have.
So let me just see if I'm clear. Whatever the students are gonna see, you're saying is already posted on the website.
yes,
All the written materials.
yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Oh, yes,
Quick question, so at no point will you be offering the HPV vaccine, correct, like at the school at any point?
we will not be.
Okay, even in the 7th and 8th grade, we're of the 12-year-old,
We are not offering the vaccine.
okay.
But information as far as, we will give them resources, so they will know what community resources are here, but again, we're going to emphasize that, you should be discussing it with your parent.
Okay, and I just wanna make sure you're also going to be offering, if you're saying, hey, HPV vaccine is good for this, that you also have the other side of that, do you guys tell them the pros and the cons?
We're
of that?
actually not going to be encouraging or discouraging the
Okay.
HPV vaccine. All we're going to be doing is letting them know that what the laws are in regards to it and the resources that are available. But as far as seeking out HPV or not, is not gonna, we're gonna stay very neutral on that.
Okay, thank you.
But do know that, but as stated, that 12 and up, they could, without parental consent, get the HPV vaccine.
Right, I just wanna make sure it's not available to them
No.
here at this school. Okay.
No, we're not gonna be
Thank you.
offering that, no, thank you, great question. Great question. Any other questions? Yes,
En relación a los videos donde dice que los niños van a ver para sacar las respuestas a la tarea que les dejaron. Un momentito.
In regards to the videos that the kids are gonna be watching at home to do their homework,
Quisiera saber dónde los puedo ver. Yo me gustaría ver primero.
I'd like to know where I can watch the videos before the kids watch those videos.
of course, yeah. So, those are, the videos are, connected to the link that we discussed, but we can actually make it, we can simplify it for you, so that it's easier to have to click onto the website and navigate through it. We can create those and have those available for you by the end of the year before it goes out, so that it'll be easier for you to sort of look at the videos. Absolutely. We have, one of them, yes, one of them does offer an audio in English and in Spanish, yes. Yes.
I have a question about, you said something that they're gonna do like little classes, like I'll call them, where they learn which website is a good site for them to look at and which one isn't. So how do you prevent them from remembering the one that are not good for them? I'm wondering.
Well,
Is there any
Yeah,
They're
so
smart kids, they can just say,
Yeah.
oh, this looks fun, I'm gonna look that up at home.
that's a great question. So some of it, so as we know, of course, the internet has tons of information. There's,
Yeah.
you know, they can access it all. So part of it is teaching them how to, first of all, getting them, we are gonna give them a handout that lists websites so that they will actually have it in writing, what are reputable websites. And part of it is, I think we are going to practice with them and looking at different websites and saying, okay, how can you tell if this would be a reliable website or not? And we're going to provide them examples of websites that they can use. So we will give it to them as well as in writing for them.
Okay.
Yes,
Will that list be made available to parents?
absolutely.
And that's before they actually get the list?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then just a follow-up on the passive consent
Yes.
evaluation tools, can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, so,
What do you mean?
so when the education starts, we will have the dates and everything set out for you for next year. So, and then we will simplify the curriculum for you so you can read through every part of it. So you have the right as a parent to opt out. You can opt out of a specific lesson. You can opt out of part of a lesson. But that opt-out process has to be in writing to Albert Einstein. So if you do not notify them in writing, if you wanted to opt out of part or all of a certain part of curriculum, passive consent means that if we do not hear from you, then that's assumed consent that we can do that.
Right. But what's the evaluation tool? Is that something you're evaluating kids on, or, because it's specifically stated and evaluation tools? What are you
They're
referring
opting
to?
out of the instruction and the evaluation.
It's curriculum, materials,
Let
and
me just look to
evaluation.
see what you are looking at so I can
Okay.
understand.
Have access to this information, including evaluation tools, used for review.
Oh,
I don't think that's the opt-out, right?
no, that's not the opt-out. So evaluation tools are, so we want to test the knowledge of the students. So oftentimes we will give, kind of like the handouts that we gave you of a pre and a post test. So part of that, we want to make sure that the students are learning what we're teaching them. So that's part of the evaluation tool. So we will provide something for the students where we, based on the curriculum, we'll sort of, we will develop something sort of like a pre-test, like what are your ideas about boundaries? What do you think is inappropriate? And then at the end, we're going to reassess to see if what we taught them, if they actually, took in knowledge or if they learned something. So that would be the evaluation part of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pertaining to your questions you guys had about the handout that's gonna go home with the different websites on it, the link that was sent out with the PowerPoint, that gives you access to look at the PowerPoint that we went over, but it also shows the speaker notes. And so in that lesson, it shows a quick description of each website that is going home with the student, and then just a little description about what the website is and what the source is. So you have access to that right now too.
Yes.
She wants to know where she can get information for the pros and cons of the HPV vaccine.
We can pull that up and we can find that for you, yeah.
Is there anybody else?
Sorry.
Yes, I was raised in Germany, and so we've had a lot of exposure to all of this. My son has already read books when he was a very small child.
Yes.
And, but those materials, they're in German, and I think you have the monopoly on the materials, right? We cannot promote those materials and share them as well if we wish, or?
Are you talking about the Advocates for Youth?
Yeah, because there is really good German material available, so for even younger, under 10.
So are you saying that you have material that
Yes, I
we
have
could?
books at home, which
Oh,
I shared
okay.
with my son when he was
Uh-huh.
quite small. And I have these materials, but they are in German, so, and I think you have the monopoly on what you will provide to the students. This would not be something that, for instance, could
be covered by the German teacher or something like that, you know, because it's in German. You have the monopoly, right?
Well, Mariana, can you speak to that? Do you,
We really appreciate that you're reaching out with those resources, but, you know, if you'd like to share them with other German parents, and then
Yeah,
they,
that's
you know,
what
they
I
wanna
think.
take them in, if you know any of them, that would be great.
So that would be private, right?
Yeah, that could be a private conversation that you can have, you know, with the other German parents that you have, but for this, I think we're gonna stick to what we have right now, just because it's been approved. But that is something that you can greatly share with any other parent that you know.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah, but thank you so much for
Yeah.
offering.
and I think that's a great, I mean, I think that's a really excellent point, because a lot of the education is gonna come from the parents, to supplement the information that we provide. So that's a great point. Did you have a
Yes,
question?
can you please show us where the materials are on the website?
Of course.
That's the 3 hours.
Is that it? So this is the website?
Yeah, so if you, let me just get over here where I can see. So if you click on lesson plans, okay, and you scroll down, so anybody can download the lesson plans. Lesson summaries, yeah, you can click on that. So they are available, oh, I'm sorry, go back. You step back. So lesson summaries, download lesson summaries. So, go ahead.
The kids will see?
It does have yes, it's not, well, the material is written, let me show you an example. So the lesson plans there are PowerPoints that are linked to these lesson plans that you're gonna be able to see, but the lesson plans are written out as far as the verbiage that we are gonna use, for example, when we talk about sexual assault, all of that lesson plan, specifically how we will teach it and the words that we will use are specifically on this, yes. You're welcome. What other questions? Nothing right now? So, I believe that you would just have to do it before the class. Mariana, do you have any, is there any time frame that you would like the parents to?
I think once we send the notification saying what the class is gonna be given to the students, that's when the date, like, please, you know, send your set paper, before this date. If not, then we just assume that the students.
So would it be a week or 2 weeks prior to the lesson?
Once we have your date, we can move forward.
Okay. All right, so once we set out, so it sounds like once the date is set out, they will give you a deadline as to when you have to have the opt-out letter back.
Yeah, it'll be in the newsletter. We will make it so that everyone has, you know, that on hand. It's not something that you don't have the information to or anything like that.
And if you do opt out and your child comes to school, then where does your child go? When everyone else goes to PE for the lessons, where does your child go? So you don't have to miss school. So where do they go for that 90 minutes?
For the class is not gonna take 90 minutes. I think they're supposed to be 50 minutes.
50 minutes.
50 minutes.
So for 50 minutes, they go where?
They will probably hang out with me.
Oh, in another room somewhere?
Yeah, and we will have a lesson available, you know, for them. They're not just gonna be sitting around doing nothing. Don't.
And what would the lesson be that you'll have for them?
We'll let you know. We can't.
Okay.
I wish we had all the answers, but sometimes we don't have all the answers.
Okay,
so-
okay.
You know, and I have to do like a little workshop. I have different things for them.
Other things
They
that are-
request information like on stress, and then I do a presentation for them on stress or things like that. Kids are really interested in things that we don't even know about, and I try to take that time so that I, you know.
Okay, so they still come to school, you guys just.
Yeah, they're still here. They're doing something. They're not, you know, and they're not gonna feel bad that they're not there or anything
Okay,
like that.
awesome.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Gracias.
But no.
Now, I do want to also say that Advocates for Youth has 21 different classes that are available. We are teaching 9 out of the curriculum. So, so in the presentation, like we talked about the 3 topics that we are talking about for 6th grade, as you're going through this, you want to look for example, the one that we are talking about, understanding boundaries. So not every class on the curriculum we are teaching, so you would just have to look specifically for the classes that we mentioned in this handout for the 6th graders, which are just those 3 classes. What other questions?
Just have one
Yes,
idea, maybe.
sure.
I'm a parent that I'm aware of what people teach to my kids, especially on this topic.
Yes.
Have you ever think about teaching parents?
Absolutely.
Don't want to have their kids go through this because, especially when I went, it opened a lot of doors when I was younger.
Mhm.
Things that I shouldn't be even thinking about. The same thing happened with my oldest. And now that my daughter's going through this, I'm like, and I want to get information, but sometimes, like you said, it's hard to get some information. I don't know, sometimes have a class for parents. and maybe
Absolutely,
want to get
that's-
involved in- Because
Yes.
it all depends how the kids take it. I know you're trying to help youth. I work with youth. And sometimes we attempt to help them, but kids that are not exposed to a lot of things get exposed to it so early that it hurts them, you know?
Yes.
It opens a lot of doors that sometimes, review the parents, like, the parents are not involved, let's get these kids and educate them a little bit, but the parents that are involved with the kids, let's separate these parents, have them educated a little bit so they can educate the kids. because
Absolutely.
I personally, not everybody's gonna take the same way, but for me, in my experience, what I have been through, and hearing you, I think maybe it's a good idea to kind of think about that, like, educate parents and want to
Yes.
educate little kids on their own, rather than just opening doors for the kids to be exposed to, because kids are kids and youth, they're smart,
Yes.
and something attracts their attention, they're just gonna go through whatever they're looking, especially if you tell them, look for these on the website, they're youth, they're just gonna look whatever they feel passionate to do, So, I don't know. I don't know.
That's a great point. Has everybody heard, I think that's an absolutely great point. So we actually want to help to support exactly what you're saying, to help to have classes available for parents. Because the truth is that the sexual education that we received way back is very different to what is being taught today. So in the handout that we gave you, and the very, in some of the questionnaire, we would like to know exactly what you said, because we would like to have something available for parents. So we would like to know what type of things would you guys like. So your feedback, yeah, for the sexual health, but if there's things, anything specific, because sometimes people never, some parents, grandparents have never received any information on reproductive health. So that puts parents, grandparents, family members in a very hard position for their children to come home and ask, what about this, what about that? And for the parents to not have the information. And we not only want to, of course, empower the children, but we want to empower all of you. And we want to service all of you as well. So thank you for bringing that up. That's an excellent point. And we do want to hear back from you. So if there are topics, concerns, recommendations, we really take that to heart. So as you're filling out that form, let us know, because in the future we would like to develop something, as you mentioned, to support parents as well. So thank you. Yes.
This isn't really a question, but it's a comment.
Sure.
It kind of echoes what you just said, because that's how I was feeling too.
Yeah.
But I think when you guys presented, you were all, the nursing students, you were all attuned to this, which is that they're only in 6th grade. I got the sense that you're gauging the information, like only presenting what's appropriate, or in like a mild.
So,
like where I feel that middle school is the right time to
Yes,
learn, 6th
yes.
grade, it's like exactly what he was saying. It's like, how much are you exposed to?
Yeah. So we have been going through this very carefully to make sure that all of the lessons are age appropriate. That is one of the strongest things that is driving this curriculum, that the information that we give them and at the time that we give it to them is age appropriate. So a lot of these lessons have been very deeply researched, and so we do want to make sure that we definitely are giving age appropriate.
Like versus introducing them to ideas or like realms that they've never really ever considered,
Yeah.
And then they're seeing, not that they should be in the dark, but
Yeah. Well, one of the things we do want also is we want to introduce language to them, proper language for things. So as we go through, we do want to make sure that that we teach them the language to it and what it means. Of course, there's children talk to other children, they hear things, they have wrong information, And what we want is we just want to make sure that we provide medically accurate terms, and so that they have that knowledge of what, what things are called, and emphasize that. So thank you.
But as parents and as teachers, as presenters, as students, there's an issue of sensitivity, right? Sixth graders, they're still little guys, right? So our approach is always going to be one that has the white glove sense of sensitivity in working with our kids. It's just not just about firing out information and figure it out. That's not our approach.
I don't know if rape would be in there for a sixth grader then. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just disagree with the opinion.
I think that's an important part of it. You could be exposed to it. There's some kids that are.
Well, I imagine there are children who are exposed to it.
Because right now they're saying that age appropriate, also that depending on where they do the age and they review those kids, because if you go to juvenile hall and you review those kids, you're gonna say, this kid's are less happy for this class, but you go to a different class or school, whatever you wanna put it, society, and you say the same things, maybe you say, damn, these kids are not, this age is not appropriate for them, this class is not appropriate. So it varies depending on, I
Absolutely.
think maybe, making a questionnaire for the kids in general, the whole school from here only, rather than just saying age appropriate, because it can vary. My little one, from 11 years old, and I have youth from 11 years that I can see like, oh my God, these guys are exposed to a lot of things. In regards to my daughter, they tell her and something like, yeah, what is this word? Who told you that word? I'm like, oh, I heard it, like, so innocent, like, I don't know what this is talking about. So
Yeah.
it varies honestly on the age appropriate, which doesn't really identify anything, like if it's right or wrong, because depending on what you do, there's studies, and so you can put an average to the age, so.
Great point, yeah.
um,
And again, I know when you hear the word rape, sexual assault, the background behind that lesson is what we want to emphasize is consent, meaning that we want them to know what no means and what inappropriate touch is and what they have the right to say no to. So that lesson, I know when you hear the word rape, it's a very harsh word. It's a harsh word for anybody. And again, as we approach the topic, again, to be sensitive to the children, really what we're trying to emphasize is mostly consent and what that means. Yes.
I'm sorry, can I go back to this again? Thank you.
Yes.
Again, same topic. So discuss the definition of rape. So are you guys going into detail, like these are all the different ways to rape somebody?
No.
I mean, I'm just, wondering what things are.
Yeah, so.
I mean, that's good.
Does anybody want to?
Not because there's different,
So.
or this is, to know
Would you
about
like to-
rape, are you gonna be saying this is sex? Are you gonna kind of go there? Because you can't get into rape unless, it's assuming that everyone knows what sex is already, so is that part of the?
Sure, so that's a great question. In terms of the curriculum for the understanding boundaries, the scenarios that are being portrayed are examples like so-and-so said something to another person that they felt was inappropriate and they came to you. What's your advice to this person? What would you recommend that this person would do because that situation made them uncomfortable? So that's, and you will have access to those lesson plans and you can see, like Brenda was saying, the verbiage and all of that. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
There will be no graphic description
Okay, that's
of rape. Mostly what we will be telling them is inappropriate touch, and what inappropriate touch, not, in the terms in which you're speaking. But essentially any unwanted touch, anything that would include, of course, sexual assault, but we're mostly going to be talking about what is inappropriate touch and what is inappropriate touch to you. So unwanted touch, people touching you in your private parts, things like that. These are all things that are boundaries that you have, physical, personal, and emphasis will be placed more along that direction. does that answer your question?
Oh, it's
It's a
how
lot
I was
different than rape, though.
Yeah, I wasn't
Right.
sure how specific.
Right, and I think in terms of the definition, when they're saying rape and sexual assault, like, those are terms, like you're saying, that are very graphic, but we will be saying and portraying it as unwanted contact, like.
And that's in those materials?
Yes.
Oh.
Let me read it to you. Get it.
Yeah, I can read it to you. It says, explain that rape usually involves some kind of forced sex, vaginal, oral, or anal. But so I think that's
Where's
too
the opt-out
graphic.
form?
It might be graphic, but it's real world. I mean, they could be exposed when you don't even know sometimes. I think it's important to
Yeah,
teach
we
them what
want-
that
we
is. And
just-
it's medical terms as well.
Yeah,
It's not
we
just
want the
inappropriate
children,
terms.
we want the children to be safe. We want them to have knowledge. We want them to be able to protect themselves and to know what is appropriate, what is inappropriate.
I do see the value in this education. I myself have taught all of my kids from a very young age what their private parts are, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So I do see the value in the education, and it sounds like you guys are augmenting what parents do at home anyway. But I think our concern as parents is, what are they going to be exposed to? What are they hearing? What are they seeing? And then we know kids, they play around after they learn something. It's all funny and they tease one another. So how much of that are you going to emphasize is to not to joke around about things like that this is serious stuff?
Yeah.
And then two, I not once heard anything about abstinence. Is
Yes.
that part of this education?
Abstinence is absolutely part of the education. So as we move forward, when we talk about, so as far as abstinence, in 7th grade, we're going to start talking about sexual and reproductive health, and that's when we're going to start getting into those topics. And abstinence is going to be emphasized in all of the teaching that we have, as well as committed relationships. So definitely through everything, as far as pregnancy prevention, STD prevention, HIV prevention, abstinence is at the forefront. And then to backtrack to your first comment about your first question, or your...
Just that I do realize the importance of this, because it does happen to kids. And unfortunately, sometimes as a parent, you don't hear about it until they're grown.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking. So,
Absolutely.
It's better to get ahead of it and understand, and they understand that there's love at home and that you can discuss these issues openly, and for them to have the knowledge. I think it would actually empower them, like you said, so that they can come to it.
And it all comes from all of you. Really, we look to all of you we are just here to help supplement what all of you are already hopefully teaching at home. We want to give you guys knowledge, resources, so that you can actually be the primary people to teach your own children. Because you know you know your kids, you know what level they're at, and we're just here to help sort of provide, to build upon what all of you are already approaching with your children. Absolutely, it's a great point.
So I can see that there's a cultural difference here between various ethnic and European
Yes.
and other backgrounds.
Yes.
So I appreciate that, and I have full respect for his viewpoint. It's just not mine. So I think the earlier they have access to all the information that's possible, because the United States has a rampant rate of unwanted teenage pregnancies.
Yes.
And I applaud the state of California to take steps to lower this rate of unwanted teenage pregnancies, which do not exist in European countries.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to point this out. And
That is
so
a great,
I'm really happy this type of education is possible.
And that's great feedback, absolutely.
Yeah, and one more thing, and then I
Yes.
digress. I just wanted to say too that sometimes it's super important to have your child in this, just food for thought, because afterwards, all the children will be talking about it, so they're gonna get a secondhand, they're going to have friends that are gonna be there, and they will get secondhand information. And I think for me, it's important to know that what they're getting is firsthand, was taught to them, other than like little Johnny told me that,
Right.
this is how things happen. So
Right.
maybe even just, if you're not completely comfortable with it, they're still gonna get that education from their friends, and it may not be quite what you're teaching.
And that's such an excellent
here.
point, because you're absolutely right, because the information is out there. Friends talk to friends, and and exactly what you said, we just want to give them we want to give them accurate knowledge. And thank you, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of research that does support that early sexual education does help to reduce early onset teenage. So thank you for saying that, because there's a lot of strong evidence that absolutely does support that. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
Have you ever had a student who got really uncomfortable during the lessons, and how do you handle it?
Yeah, so I had the privilege of being with, last year at Albert Einstein, I was with the 8th grade students. So, of course, you may have some, the students actually responded very, very well and were very responsive. Of course, you have, kids that don't really take it serious and are kind of silly, but the way that we approach that is when we started the education, we set a list of ground rules. The ground rules in which, that as we move forward and talk, that we're going to try to use terms that are, medically, they're accurate, using the right proper terms to respond to things. But again, we just emphasize that sort of the seriousness behind it, and we made it an environment where it was sort of safe to ask questions. When we did do the 8th grade presentation, and we got just an overwhelming amount of questions. Mostly appropriate questions. So the questions that were kids that, of course, that were heckling a little bit. Again, we just sort of redirected them to the importance of what we were talking about, and respecting, having boundaries within the classroom, and sort of respecting each other.
More being uncomfortable that they say, I don't want to hear anymore. Like, for example, the explanation about the rape. I don't feel like my 6th grade daughter wants to hear his definition.
Yeah.
So I can imagine her, I can handle this, and she walks out. So
yeah, we try to at the beginning just sort of set an environment where it's an uncomfortable topic to talk about. It's uncomfortable for kids, but a lot of adults, it's also uncomfortable for adults. So we sort of just set that at the beginning and say, look, we're going to talk about something that is going to make people feel uncomfortable. It's a normal feeling, but that we just want to make sure that in the classroom that we all sort of just kind of treat this respectfully, that we're respectful to each other, that we talk to each other respectfully, and that was successful for us with the 8th graders. And for the students, oh yeah, I've also been with 5th graders, yeah. Yeah, I've also been with 5th graders as well. I've also taught sexual education to 5th graders. But we also, as nurses, we also make ourselves available for students that do not want to raise their hand or have questions. We provide them note cards as well, where they can ask questions in a safe, environment. And then also we are available after as well. I had a lot of response from both 5th graders and 8th graders who came to approach me afterwards to talk to me privately, and we will make ourselves available to the students as well for that. Yes.
So our daughter had it last year in 5th grade, and the only thing that made her uncomfortable was that there was boys in the class.
Yeah.
Is there any way to split that, or is it just all together?
It is all together, and it's actually, they used to, especially back in our day, they used to separate boys and girls. But the reason why we have it co-ed is because it's important for everybody to know about each other. So that is the reason why we have, we do have boys and girls in the same class, just because we want them both to understand,
Is there any way to separate them at the end if they have questions that they want to
course,
ask?
yeah.
Like, could they maybe just do a
Of
boys and
course,
girls
yes.
question and answer session?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, she was
Absolutely we could.
100% okay with everything and all the language except
Yeah.
for that.
We want-
She didn't want to
yes.
say anything in front of the boys.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And that's what we did, and we did find that the girls did tend to, the boys were more sort of, raising their hands, and the girls wanted to have private. So yes, we will have that available where they can come to us separately and ask questions, where they feel safe. Yeah, great point.
Is there any chance that you can modify the plan so that it doesn't get that graphic and it becomes more like what the nurse explained? screen?
Yeah, we do not plan on getting graphic with that.
So
You know,
will you
It's
monitor?
graphic enough, I think is what he's saying, not tender.
so we are gonna be teaching it as the way that she, did the lesson plan, that is how it's gonna be taught. Well, was your concern with that?
So it's a little bit different from the way it's written in the lesson plan,
Yeah.
right? So which one is going to be taught?
We have, I will provide, I will send the link of exactly the verbiage that we're gonna use so that you can review it.
For each age?
For
group
for
or-
each lesson, exactly the verbiage, yep. I will provide that all for you.
I have a
Yes.
quick question. I don't want to lay a huge burden on
No,
you guys.
no.
But with respect to understanding boundaries, I
Yes.
myself have been a witness to rape on a school bus.
Okay.
And so the most difficult part of that is that when we did approach the only adult on the bus, which was the bus driver, he was like, whatever, just get off on your stop. And so how do you approach something like that with kids?
As far
What
as
are they
who-
supposed to do if they
Who
feel
to go for?
right? Who to
where
go
to
to?
seek, yeah.
What do you do in that situation where the only adult in there is not going to do anything about it or doesn't do anything about it?
During, you're talking about during a sexual assault?
If they are going to be a witness to something like that, what would they do?
Well, we want to let them know who they can go to. So one of the things, so if they were to, so in that situation, going to an adult and there's not, they can go to the authorities, they can go to teachers, they can go to healthcare professionals. We want to give them an option of who you would go to. So in the school, we have people like Mariana, social worker, healthcare professionals like us, nurses. So we are going to let them know who they can talk to and provide to. So just because they did not, you didn't get good response from that adult, we want to know, we want them to have the skills to know where to go to, who to talk to. Even if you reach a roadblock, like you did, who else could you talk to? And we will discuss scenarios like that.
And I just really want to let you know that here at Albert Einstein, we work so hard on trying to have the student connect to a teacher or a staff member or a counselor, the psychologist. We work very hard. We meet weekly per grade, and we talk about students and who they're kind of like mentoring. So if you go home and you ask your student, who do you feel safe talking to? I will say by now, 80% of the students should name at least one teacher. Because we work very hard. We stand outside, we good morning the name, we make sure that they know that we know who they are and that we are there for them. And I mean, as a counselor and social worker, I deal with a lot of different things that you wouldn't even imagine. And these are students coming up to us and feeling safe talking to us as opposed to sometimes their parents. And a lot of the counseling sheets that we get here at school is, my friend is going through this, my friend went through that, how can we help my friend? So in regards to topics like this, I think it's important to know because sometimes friends are the number one line of defense to other students. So I would think that if they don't use it for themselves, they can use it for someone else.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions, comments? I just want to say thank you all for coming. You guys have provided some excellent feedback. Please, we ask you on the forms that we gave you, we have a post-test. If you can fill out the post-test and any comments that you might have, and then the students will be at the back in the back of the room to collect those. I will be up front here if you guys have any other questions. But thank you so much for coming.